Hello, and welcome to the Hebrew Bible Institute. We're so excited that you've joined us today. With me is my friend Nathan. I'm Savannah and Pastor Alexander Bolotnikov. We're very excited to talk today about something that is kind of a big deal in belief and Christendom. Last lesson, we talked about who Satan is, and we spent a lot of our time focusing on the book of Job because it talks a lot about that, about the original controversy that brought us to where we are. And today's big question is, why does God allow bad things to happen? And how did that controversy we talked about last time get us to this point that we're at today?
Yeah, very important question. And I'm just curious. When, I don't know if you thought about this, maybe you observed it among the people you interact, when you ask them why wouldn't they believe in God, what kind of reason they bring up?
That's a good question. I think for me, one of the things I hear is, well, God doesn't really care, because if he cared, he wouldn't let bad things happen.
Yeah, that's probably right. Is the same observation you had?
Essentially, yeah. That if God is all-powerful, then why is he letting bad things happen? Either that or he can't stop it because he's not all-powerful, right?
Yeah.
That's the comparison they make.
Yes, that's so. So this is the most fundamental question. And as last lesson we did touch on the book of Job, and this is why it's just so important book, such an important book in the Bible. Although it's very difficult, I don't know. Have you read this book quite often?
Not often, but I have read it.
Similar.
Is it an easy read?
It is not. It's very challenging. There's a lot in it that doesn't make a lot of sense until you understand context.
Yes. Sometimes all these Job's friends, it's all poetic,
Yeah.
It's all poetic, it's poetry, it's a set of dialogues, and you take a phrase from this friend, Job's friend, out of context, you think he's telling a very spiritual, smart thing. But at the end of all of it, God says, "Oh, I am angry at your friends, bring offerings for them."
Yeah.
So all these nice words were actually not correct in their context.
Yeah.
And that's how the literature, the wisdom literature in the Bible. But Moses made it easy for us. And the reason why I say Moses, because the book of Job consists of two distinct genres, starting from chapter 3 all the way to chapter 41, you get a poetry. It's a big poem written in very old version of Aramaic, very difficult to translate, very ancient styles of poetry. It's like an English pre-Shakespearean style. So you can imagine what it is. That's why it's not an easy read.
Yeah.
I don't think Shakespeare is an easy read.
No, not anymore. You really got to get into Shakespeare's tongue,
Yes, so it's kind of a similar way.
Yeah.
But then we have Moses. Moses wrote first chapter and the last chapter. And Moses just writes the story. And this story is actually what we're very interested about, because it does tell a lot how Satan operates, how evil works. So let's try to dive into it. Let's read Job chapter 1 verses 6 through 12.
Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth." and from walking back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? Have you blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land? But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
Okay. So, and then we start seeing things happen. Just for an example, just let's read verses, what Satan is doing. Verse 13, let's say, through 19.
Job 1:13. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, when the Sabeans raided them and took them away. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you."
So it's the worst thing possible. Sometimes we have, and in fact, when we talk about bad things to happen, what is described here are the worst cases. It happens, similar things could happen to people, but it's a worse, like I can't help but think about what happened for the past 2 years with this Gaza war.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know if you watch what's happening. So you got this abduction they call the red hair family. So they take the father, they took the father, they took mother, and mother had by that time one boy. It's a Bibas family. One boy was almost like 1 year, 8 months old, and the other boy was only 9 months old. It's, they take them. They take all of them. So the father was released a week ago. Can you imagine what this man was going through? I mean, here's his wife, here's his baby. Not only did he go through, they held them in the dungeons and the tunnels. Not only did today in Jewish media, it's 251 people. Some of them were released earlier, but like 100 people. We don't know even how many of them are alive, but they're just being released today. And they refer this event like a second Auschwitz. Because, and this family kind of stands out because the Hamas terrorists keep telling that the mother and 2 babies died during the bombing raid. But it wasn't possible because all the hostages were way deep in tunnels. The bomb could not reach it. So, people fear that, mother and 2 boys just perished in those tunnels. And the father we know he's alive, but can you imagine what he feels? And, it would be even I don't know how to even characterize if it happens that she and 2 boys will be released. Can you imagine this baby second birthday, third birthday. It's in such a horrible conditions. So this is some kind of, it's an example of what Job was going through. I'm just trying to think what Mr. Bibas is now like being alive going through.
Right. It brings it relevant to us because we don't see this kind of stuff that happened to Job happening now, really.
Very often.
Right. But the horror that took place to Job is happening over and over again on the earth, like to this family.
Yeah. So like what I was, most normal people will agree today that what happened to this family, Bibas family, is really, really, really one of the most horrible things that could happen, right? And so Job experienced a very similar horrible thing to happen to him. And we read that God permitted this to happen.
Yeah, and it's easy to see why people would want to question the goodness of God, because if God says that he wants the best for us, why would he allow that?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to this question, so when I was in Portland, there were 7 Holocaust survivors who lived in Portland. Most of these people, by that time, 2013, and so, because I met Holocaust survivors earlier, in the 80s, there were still, Holocaust survivors who were adults.
Right.
But of course, by 2013, those who were Holocaust survivors alive by this time were children, when they were taken. And so, different age, some of them went through these horrors when they were 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's teenage years. They all grew up in religious Jewish families, mostly in Poland. That's whom I met. But they would tell their stories, and people would ask them question. And the question that was repeated, do you believe in God? And these Holocaust survivors except one. But the rest of them would say on different occasions, no, after what happened to us, we cannot believe in God. The only difference was Menachem Teblum. We called him Many, because Many wrote the book. Many lost all his family. Like, there was 100 family members, cousins and other relatives. They were all killed in Treblinka. He had to run around Poland hiding from being killed. He saw how God's hand was over him. He wrote this book, God on My Side. At the age of 89, he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. So it's a wonderful story. But as we see in this kind of horrors, again, what's important is for us is how do we, when we survive this, because those who don't survive, they can't tell the tale. But those who survive tell that they have to go through some thinking. And yes, 6 of those survivors came to conclusion that they were not, that God does not exist, couldn't happen. But many came to a different conclusion. And he believed that God saved him throughout the 5 years of hiding. God saved him. And it's also, there's my when we talk about this evil, this comes to my mind because I was raised on these stories as a Jewish believer in Jesus. One of my mentors long time ago, he was born in Riga, Latvia, and in Orthodox Jewish family. The ghetto was liquidated, which meant that all the people were convoyed to the train station. That's his story. He was walking with his family to death. And so it was rainy, muddy, terrible, and they were just walking on the road with gunmen, with machine guns around them, carrying, and the dogs barking. And then he hears the voice, jump. So he jumps into the ditch. When he jumps into the ditch, the convoy guard sees him and shoots, several bullets. And the bullet pierced through the soft tissue, but he was okay. He lost consciousness for he doesn't know how long. When he regained consciousness, there was nobody. It was just utter pitch darkness. There was nobody. The only thing was right there in the distance, there was a light. So he began crawling through the muddy field. He began crawling toward this light. He crawled to the house, couple miles. He was crawling to the house. He crawled to the house. He knocked on the door, almost losing all the consciousness again. And the two women picked him up. They were sisters, Seventh-day Adventists. They put him into a cellar, and for 3 years, they were hiding him. And being, even though all his parents, siblings were killed, most likely in Treblinka, he accepted Jesus because he saw how God saved him. So when we, there are so many stories, although there are many people who see the evil, like who may be watching this news about these hostages become angry about God, but as a test, it's a personal testimonies of the Holocaust survivors who are telling and who are testifying about God in their lives. So this is very paradoxical, but let's go back to what the book of Job is telling us, and let's focus and see what exactly did Satan say to God that prompted God to basically respond to Satan, he is in your hand. That's the main question. Let's go here to verses 9 and 10.
Job 1 verse 9 says, "So Satan answered the Lord and said, Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land."
And verse 11 would make sense to read.
"But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face."
When you read this Satan's question, what do you think he is doing here? What is he questioning?
He's questioning Job's faith. Oh, he's been given all this great stuff. That's why he likes you. Hurt him and see if it's still there.
Even more, in my opinion, it's more than faith. It's motivation. Love. See, the main problem, like when we talk about when we talk about this evil and the story of how this happened and why God permits this, the key word in this is the nature of love. Let's go and read the story of Adam and Eve, and particularly the dialogue between Eve and the serpent. So let's read Genesis 3:1 through 5.
Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
In all these 5 verses which you just read, where's the punchline? Where is this twist which did the trick that Eve decided to eat? What do you think?
I think it's in verse 5 where Satan says, Eat it and you're going to be like God.
Or in verse 1, which says, Has God indeed said?
Aha. Well, let's follow. So first, has God indeed said? And how does the verse 5 begin?
For God knows.
For God knows. So what is questioned here?
The goodness, the honesty of God.
Motivation. Motivation. So it's not as much, you will be like God. It's God is afraid that you would be like him.
To compete against him in some way, right?
It's motivation. God is not sincere with you. What kind, this type of question, what if let's imagine a situation, and there are unfortunately many situations like this in the marriages, when let's say he comes to her, brings her a gift and something like this, and she's nice to him while he's bringing the gifts, you know? I just had a very, bad situation. A friend of mine, he was pretty well off, and she was a model, and he married her, and they even come to the church. But at the end of all of it, he realized, she basically sold him out, and, he realized, well, she didn't love me. She loved what I had, and she wanted to use me. So think about this. If someone you love and somebody sows the seed that this is not a true love, but she or he is using, what does it do?
Makes you think about like whether they really love you or not.
It breaks the trust.
Yeah.
It breaks the trust. Well, suppose it's lie and hopefully. What does it take to restore the trust?
A lot of work.
A lot of time.
Both, yeah, and time is important.
And willingness to try again.
but it's time, which is the key factor. Even though this may not be correct, let's say somebody sowed the seed and it's not correct, but suspicion came, distrust came. It's horrible. So this is how Satan works, both with Adam and Eve. So Satan has sown the seed of distrust in Eve's mind. God hasn't given us everything what he could have given us. There's something which God is keeping from us. Why is he keeping it from us? Back before, what did he say about the tree of good and evil?
God or Satan?
What did God say about the tree of good and evil?
He said not to eat from it.
And then what? And if you do,
or you will die.
Or you will die.
Yeah.
So, so you see what happens. Now, it's the question. Hey, he doesn't want us to eat that because he's hiding something from us. There's some kind of ulterior motive. So this is the most destructive thing.
It's interesting because some people might ask, well, why even have a test to begin with, right? Why did God even say that to begin with?
Yeah, why even give them the option?
Yeah, the option.
Just don't create the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
But I think the answer to that is that it proves that God's character really is what he says it is, that he's giving the option.
Yeah, makes sense.
In the book of Job, I think the answer is, I agree with you, Savannah. Take a look in the book of Job. Let's go back to the book of Job, because one thing is, Satan succeeded to sow in Eve's mind the seed of suspicion and mistrust.
Yeah.
And it led to a disaster of, broken relationship. With God, it's different. There was no broken relationship because God did not doubt. But remember how the verse starts, there was other sons of God. So Satan openly challenges God in front of the universe, and he says, take a look again, what he says, because all this conversation is in front of the crowd of angels, so it's in front of the universe. So this is the open challenge. Take a look again, verse 9 and 10.
So Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land.
So what is Satan questioning from God?
He's questioning Job's, faith and motivation, that his belief in God will continue even when he's in turmoil?
Yes, and even more than that. Think about this. Remember what the very first commandment in the law. Remember this this Pharisee asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment in the law?
Yeah.
Take a look at what the commandment looks like. So Matthew 22, verse 37.
Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Okay.
So I don't know if you noticed something about the verb love. I have an interesting experience long time ago in the 80s. I was working as a student at the nuclear power plant in Ukraine. So back then, they had this huge, the size of this whole building. They had this computer room. And you have all these kind of, long list of like lockers. And inside the lockers, there were the circuit boards. And I was checking the voltage on the circuit boards. And it was the RAM of that computer that controlled the reactor. So we didn't have computers at all back then. So we would, after the shift, we would go to the terminal and we would familiarize what the computer is. So there was this list of commands and, the old system, the DOS, remember that one? So you have to really put the prompt correctly. And so we put the prompt, there was no DOS, it was Soviet system, crazy one. So you put this in Russian. And so but the prompts had to be correct. But we love to put some kind of silly into this to test it. And so like you put, 3 plus whatever, divide, some kind of long mathematics, and he would get the answer. So then you put something really, really silly, like divide by 0. And it would say, I'm sorry, I cannot execute this command. So think about this. We can execute all the commands as humans. Like I say, can you please read this? You read. Can you please stand? Can you please sit? Well, I can say to a girl, can you marry this guy if I give you $1 million? Maybe she will. Okay? But I can offer her $1 billion. She's not going to love him.
Right.
If she doesn't love him, she's not going to love him.
Yeah.
So this is the nature of love. God wants us to love him.
You can't buy love or force love.
Buy, force, coerce, cajole. There's no way.
Yeah. Which is really, as you're making the point, that's really what Satan is saying, is that you're buying his love.
That's where I was going. Thank you, Savannah. So, and so, what is God doing? He allows Satan to test his own theory. The major question, I think, from this, and I can imagine what some people may think from hearing this answer. What do you think they're going to think?
I mean, the immediate reaction is, why is it us?
Yeah, I mean, how come God decided to do something like this?
Right.
So, and here where it comes to the issue of trust. Sometimes, and, this is something which, I was watching this war in Gaza very carefully, and what the analytical people who are doing the analytics saying about what could have Israel done. And it's like any decision Israel would do is a bad decision.
Yeah.
So in this particular situation, which happened there, any decision the Israel government would do is a bad decision.
Yeah.
It's like if they don't go with the army into the Gaza and just leave it like this, then the whole population inside will say, what are you doing? Are you defending us or not? Now they go into the army. Now the whole world is saying, are you killing? Any decision. And even this kind of a hostage deal is a bad decision.
Yeah.
There's no good decision with this kind of evil. Well, very often we have to make a decision. And among several bad decisions, sometimes we are at the situation when several bad decisions, out of several possible bad decisions, we just choose the least
bad.
least bad
Yeah.
with our mind.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes we can be right, sometimes we can be wrong. It is very difficult even now, through all these events that happen, it's very difficult to really be convinced, did God make always the right decision? That's where the trust comes. That's where the trust comes. Why did, like some people lose their children? Why did my child die? And accepting and trusting God that at this circumstance, He made the best decision. It's not easy to do. But when we get there and we'll see our loved ones who died, in our opinion, too early, we'll have 1,000 years to hear God's explanation and understand it, why this decision was the best decision possible under those circumstances.
It's a lot to think about as we go throughout the rest of our week. We're really glad that you guys joined us to study this lesson today. I pray that your love for God continues to blossom and grow, that your faith deepens, and that you will decide that you're going to trust God no matter the circumstances. We invite you to like, subscribe, share these videos with your friends, family, and we look forward to seeing you here next time.